Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are back with more Wealthy Monsters. This time we're doing the other half of the duo that invented Google. Last episode we did Larry Page, so for this episode we're doing Sergey Brin. These are the two names you're going to see more often than not when it comes to dealing with Google and its parent company, Alphabet Inc. Now, because these are the two that really started it all. And on the world billionaires list, which is Forbes, for 2025, 2024, he wasn't on the list, but Page was only at 10th. 2023, neither of them was on there. But again, 2025, Page is at 7, Brin's right behind him at 8. If you look at the Bloomberg Billionaires Index, Page is at 8, Brin is at 9. And then the Forbes up-to-date list, real-time billionaires list, Page is 7, Brin is 8. They're only usually separated by about $5-10 billion. It's hard imagining saying only 5 to 10 billion, but that's the numbers we're dealing with here. They make these ridiculous numbers that would be for anybody else seem tiny. But yeah, like I said, he helped Page set up Google, stayed with them, and was there for the restructuring that created Google's now parent company, Alphabet Incorporated. But let's look at Sergey Brin as an individual. He was born August the 21st, 1973 in Moscow, Russia, which back then was the USSR. It wasn't just Russia. It was still in the age of the Cold War and was still the United Soviet Socialist Republic, the USSR. He was an American computer scientist and entrepreneur who created, along with Page, the online search engine Google, one of the most successful sites on the internet. His family moved from Moscow to the United States in 1979, so Page would have been anywhere from 5 to 6 year old. After receiving degrees in 1993 in computer science and mathematics at the University of Maryland, he entered Stanford University's graduate program. That's where he meets Page, who is a fellow graduate student. They both work. Brin joins Page in working on the idea of the search engine. I think they originally named it Backrub, if I remember right. But yeah. But they're working together on this. Brin would receive a master's degree in 1995, but went on leave from Stanford's doctorate program to continue working on the search engine. In mid-98, Brin and Page began receiving outside finance. We talked about this when we talked about Page and the story of Google, talking about him originally being from the mathematical term for the number 1 followed by 100 zeros, which is actually spelled Googol. Google. They created Google out of the actual search engine, since they had been having such success at the University of Stanford, setting it up for the first time. They leave and go off on their own, incorporate Google from the technology they had been working on for search engines. They acquire a number of companies, such as YouTube, which is probably the biggest company they purchased. And it was purchased for $1.65 billion in stock. That was 2006. So yeah. The same year, Google was criticized for agreeing to comply with the Chinese government's censorship requirements, blocking websites extolling democracy, for example, or those covering the 1989 demonstrations in Tiananmen Square. Brin defended the decision, saying that Google's ability to supply some, albeit restricted, information was better than supplying none. 2015, the company restructured, forming Alphabet Inc., which would become the parent company. Brin would be the president in December 2019. He left the position, though he continued to serve on Alphabet's board of directors, kind of like Page. So yeah, they both play pivotal roles in Google. Let's look a little more in depth on who Sergey Brin is. Like I said, born August 21st, 1973 in Moscow, Russia, then the USSR. Although he is a U.S. citizen, like I said, he came here at the age of 5 or 6. Degrees from the University of Maryland and Stanford University. Computer scientist, businessman. He was married to Anne Wojcicki, who was, I think she was the head of YouTube for a while. Wojcicki or whatever. I don't know if I'm right on that or not, but apparently she co-founded 23andMe, so. But they were married in 2007, divorced 2015, and then he married Nicole Shanahan in 2018, divorced in 2023. So yeah. 3 children. Yeah, Susan Wojcicki's garage is where they set up Google. Okay, so yeah. She was the chief executive officer of YouTube from 2014 to 2023. That's okay, so that's Anne E. Wojcicki. That's Susan Wojcicki. I got them confused. The last name is the same. Kind of curious as if they're related. Are they sisters or something? Anne, sister, yeah. So they are. Susan and Anne Wojcicki. Wojcicki. I don't know. It's a Polish name. It's what it looks like. It's hard to pronounce them. Anyway, yeah. Sergey Brin, full name Sergey Mikhailovich Brin. Born to Russian Jewish parents, Mikhail and Eugenia Brin, who both graduates of Moscow State University. Father would be a retired mathematics professor at the University of Maryland, and his mother a researcher at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. Says 48 to 2024. Did they both recently pass last year? Yeah, it may have been something like that. Brin, the Brin family lived in a three-room apartment in central Moscow, sharing it with Sergei's paternal grandmother. In 1977, after his grandfather returned from a mathematical conference in Warsaw, Poland, Mikhail Brin announced that it was time for the family to immigrate. They formally applied for their exit visa in September 1978, and as a result, his father was promptly fired. For related reasons, his mother also had to leave her job. For the next 8 months, without any steady income, they were forced to take on temporary jobs as they waited, afraid their request would be denied, as it was for many refusniks. I guess that's the Russian word for refugee. Typically, but not exclusively, for Soviet Jews. In May 1979, they were granted an official exit visas and allowed to leave the country, which is kind of surprising knowing the knowledge, the mathematical knowledge and stuff they both were capable of. They lived in Vienna and Paris, while Mikhail Brin secured a teaching position at the University of Maryland with help from Anatoly Kotok. During the time, Brin family received support and assistance from the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. They arrived in the U.S. October 25th, 1979. So yeah. Attend some fairly decent schools. When you see things like this, Paint Branch Montessori School, yeah, it's your little well-to-do type people. In Adelphi, Maryland. Attended Eleanor Roosevelt High School in Maryland. Receives a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from the University of Maryland in 1993 with honors in Computer Science and Mathematics at 19. In 1993, he interned at the Wolfram Research, the developers of Mathematica. Brin began his graduate study in computer science at Stanford on a graduate fellowship from the National Science Foundation, receiving a Master's of Science in Computer Science in 1995. As of 2008, he was on leave from his PhD studies at Stanford, but at that point, they're really growing with the company Google, now Alphabet Inc., Who knows? He may go back to finish out his PhD, or he may leave it sitting. It's hard to say. But yeah, that he would meet up with Larry Page. The two men seemed to disagree on most subjects, but after spending time together, they became intellectual soulmates and close friends. Brin's focus was on developing data mining systems, while Page's was on extending the concept of inferring the importance of a research paper from its citations in other papers. Together, they authored a paper titled The Anatomy of Large-Scale Hypertextual Web Search Engine, Backrub. That's where a lot of this kind of started from. Backrub was a web crawler. Yeah. Just an internet bot that looks at different web pages, gathering information. But this way they were able to develop the PageRank algorithm, which allowed them to gather searches so much quicker. So yeah. And again, we've quite a lot talked already about Google itself when we were talking about Larry Page. So yeah, we talked about that quotation there. Backrub had already exhibited the rudimentary functions of characteristics of a search engine. A query input was entered and it provided a list of backlinks ranked by importance. But yeah. They would be compared to Johannes Gutenberg by creating Google. Also, not long after the two cooked up their new engine for web searches, they began thinking about information that was at the time beyond the web, such as digitizing books and expanding health information. Brin has invested $4.5 million in Space Adventures, a Virginia-based space tourism company. Brin and Page jointly own a customized Boeing 767-200 and an Dassault Dornier Alpha jet, and pay $1.3 million a year to house them and two Gulfstream 5 jets owned by Google executives at Moffett Federal Airfield. The aircraft has scientific equipment installed by NASA to allow experimental data to be collected in flight. So for them, there are even just what they build, it's like, gotta get that data, get that information, which is actually a good thing, so I commend them on that at least. Backer of the LTA Research and Exploration LLC, an airship maker company. In October 2023, LTA's 124-meter-long flagship, Pathfinder 1, became the largest airship since the Hindenburg to receive clearance for flight testing permitted over the boundaries of Moffett Field and neighboring Palo Alto Airport's airspaces at a height of up to 460 meters. Okay. Personal life. Raised Jewish, but not religious. 2007, he marries Ann Wojcicki, a biotech analysis. We talked about how she created 23andMe. They married in the Bahamas, had a son in 2008 and a daughter in 2011. 2013, they were living separately after Brin had had an extramarital affair with a Google Glass colleague. In June 2015, Brin and Wojcicki finally finalized their divorce. November 7th, 2018, married Nicole Shanahan, a legal tech founder, had a daughter born in late 2018. They separated on September the 15th, 2021, and Brin filed for divorce January 4th, 2022. And in summer 2023, the divorce was finalized. The Wall Street Journal said the reason for the breakup was a brief affair in 2021 between Shanahan and Elon Musk, but these allegations have been denied and the article has since been retracted. And of course, Nicole Shanahan, if you're wondering who she was RFK Jr.'s running mate during 2024 for the presidential election. So, yeah. His mother, Eugenia, has been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. 2008, they made a donation to the University of Maryland School of Medicine, where his mother received treatment. Brin himself has donated over $1 billion to fund research on the disease, according to Forbes. Brin and Wojcicki separated, still jointly ran the Brin-Wojcicki Foundation until 2014. Since then, Brin has used the Sergey Brin Family Foundation and a donor-advised fund for his philanthropic giving. They donated extensively to the Michael J. Fox Foundation and in 2009 gave $1 million to support the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, which, if you remember back, is what helped his family move to the U.S. from the USSR. So, yeah. Brin is a donor to the Democratic Party candidates and organizations, having donated $5,000 to Barack Obama's re-election campaign and $30,800 to the DNC. Though he did attend the second inauguration of Donald Trump, sitting alongside Donald Trump's supporters and other tech moguls. So yeah, middle of the road Democrat punk like Obama, he backed. You know, it don't say anything about backing actual candidates who are somewhat left, like Bernie or AOC. But these middle of the road trash candidates. And then going right to back Trump shows he's not really interested in doing anything but the status quo. He's making millions and billions. Why shake things up? Awards accolades. 2002 to 2009. Brin and Page were named MIT Review TR 100 Top 100 Innovators Under 35 in the World. 2003, both Brin and Page received an honorary MBA from IE Business School. I'm assuming that's Internet Explorer, though I may be wrong. Instituto de Empresa, IE University. So, Not Internet Explorer. The Instituto de Empresa Business School. Honorary MBA. 2003, Brin and Page, both award recipients and national finalists for the EY Entrepreneur of the Year Award. Um, 2004, they received the Marconi Prize for elected fellows of the Marconi Foundation, cited for the invention that has fundamentally changed the way information is retrieved today. 2004, Brin received the American Academy of Achievement's Golden Plate Award with Larry Page at the ceremony in Chicago. 2006, Brin named one of the inaugural class of winners for the Great Immigrants Award, named by the Carnegie Corporation of New York. You know, wealthy institutions shaking hands of the wealthy. Congratulations on being wealthy. 2009 to present. In November 2009, Forbes named Brin and Page the 5th most powerful people in the world. Earlier that year, 2009, in February, Brin was inducted into the National Academy of Engineering, which is among the highest professional distinctions accorded to an engineer, and honors those who have made outstanding contributions to engineering research practice. He was selected specifically for leadership and development of rapid indexing and retrieval of relevant information from the World Wide Web, which is how we get the www address when we look up web pages. Though a lot of web pages now don't even use www. But, yeah. In their profiles of fellows, the National Science Foundation included a number of early awards. As of September 2024, Brin is the 10th richest person in the world, according to Bloomberg, with an estimated net worth of $135 billion. He's been in the movie The Internship as himself. But yeah, that's everything we have listed there on Sergey Brin. So yeah. Sergey Brin and his partner Larry Page, creators, founders of Google, and then the restructuring of it to become a parent company of Google Alphabet Incorporated. But we'll go ahead and end this episode there. Thank you all for sticking around if you have to this point. As always, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. Of course, I'll be putting my links and sources in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.